How's it going, Plant Heroes? Plant Hero Call here today to talk about the MONSTERA DELICIOSA, aka the Swiss cheese plant. It's definitely one of the most tropical looking plants because they're used to growing in the jungle. They grow up on trees, they vine around them, on the forest floor, snake all over the place, and they are truly beautiful monsters, is what we're going to call them. But we're going to go over some care tips and kind of help you figure out some best practices for how to have a monster in your home. We've got a small one here today and a much larger one, and towards the end of the video we'll show you how we got from this to this and give you some tips to get along with your new monster friend. So follow me. Let's check it out. Magic. Okay, so first let's talk about why they have the Swiss cheese on the leaves. They have big, huge oval leaves. They're kind of heart-shaped, and if they were to be solid all the way through, they would block light coming through to the lower leaves of the plant. So a little trick is the more light you give the plant, the more Swiss cheese effect you'll get from it. But definitely, as far as light goes, not too much light. It's gonna want bright, indirect light, but if it gets in the sun, you'll get some brown splotching on the leaves. Those are called sunspots, and basically you can trim them off of the plant for looks. They're not going to harm the plant, but if you leave the plant in the sun for too long, it's going to burn up. So try and find that perfect spot for it, and it will grow happy and strong. So this is an example right here of one that is probably, I would say, 2 to 3 years old. What they do is they cut pieces off of a larger plant, propagate them, plant them in the soil, and they'll resprout, regrow, and turn into a whole new plant. You can see it's not as huge as this one. The leaves are definitely smaller. They're actually a little bit flimsier too. So don't expect this from this anytime too soon. This big one is probably, I would say, 4 or 5 years worth of growth from a larger plant that was then chopped down, cut up into different pieces, and we actually cut this one from an outdoor job where it was growing in a planter outdoors and way too big, and we cut 4 of these little ones, 4 of these big ones, and repotted them into their own little pots. One thing you'll commonly see with these monsteras is these roots that are popping out here. This is the plant trying to spread, search for a different water source, and just in general grow more and more. So don't be alarmed if you see this. You can actually cut these if you need to. That's fine for the plant. Just make sure that your pruners are clean, because that's, that would not be good to introduce bad bacteria into the plant. But these roots are fine, and I wouldn't repot it until you see roots actually coming out of the bottom of the pot, or really out of the soil, cascading down. That would be a good time to do it. But the only other reason to not repot would be if you want to keep it the same general size, because once you repot, it's gonna grow like a monster. Speaking of repotting, I would repot in the spring or summer, would be the most ideal time for it. If you do repot, you're gonna want to use some well-draining soil. You're gonna want to maybe even put a little layer of rocks at the very bottom, and you'll make sure that it all drains out. The roots will actually grow into the rocks, but that way they won't be fully submerged in soil that will make them rot. The idea is to water it enough so that it drains, and make sure that the soil is dry pretty much with most plants before you water it again. It could go dry for 3 or 4 days, but if you let it go too dry, you'll start seeing brown tips on the edge of the leaves and kind of like dry cracking sort of thing. That's the plant letting you know, hey, I'm not getting enough water. Speaking of the leaves, if you give it too much water, you're gonna start seeing yellowing leaves towards the bottom. It'll start losing some leaves, and that's it trying to tell you, hey, I am too saturated. So right in the sweet spot. The more light you give it, the more water it's going to need, but you'll definitely start to see the leaves droop if you do not give it enough water. Okay, so let's get this big boy up here and talk a little bit about what a more mature Monstera is going to look like. You can use some all-purpose fertilizer, but a good general rule of thumb would be to use one with 10-15-10. That's NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. You'll find it listed on all the labels, but it's a general good idea to fertilize every couple months, give it that boost that it needs to grow big and strong. Once it is growing big and strong though, it might need a little help standing upright. So this one actually is strong enough to stand upright on its own, but if it wasn't, hypothetically, you can use stakes or a trellis or something like that, and you can stick them into the soil and then kind of tie the main vine up to it to give it that upright look, because really what the monster wants to do is grow out and over and down and just keep spreading and spreading and spreading all over the place. But if you give it a trellis, or if you give it something to latch onto and tie it up to it, you can train it up onto the trellis. So that should kind of help you tame your monster. Just be aware that it's not going to stay perfectly in the corner like you want it. It's going to want to spread and grow towards the light. These leaves act like solar panels that actually orient themselves to the light. So that's what it's going to try and do. It's going to try and spread towards the light, grow towards the light, and you're going to need to rotate it maybe once a week even. I would say just to get even growth all over and so that it doesn't grow too far in one direction. And now let's talk about propagating, because the glory of these plants is you can cut the new growth vines off of it and make a new plant out of it. They are rowdy and they will root up and they'll be nice and strong. But so here's an example of where root node is coming out already. You can kind of see right here. So if you were to cut on the vine right here, leave a couple leaves for the plant to still grow and collect sunlight with, and then you plant this into the soil. Excuse me, sir. Yes, the monster. But so you plant this into the soil, and this root will act as the leader root to grow your whole new plant. So this could be one. This is actually just one main vine right now, but I'll show you on this little one. Let's grab him. So on this little one, you could cut right here. There are plenty of roots, and you could replant this whole section. There's another one you can see over here. We could cut right here. That would make a new one. And then it will resprout and actually just start regrowing from where you cut it. So you're not going to injure the mother plant, you could call it. But it's a good way to make more. Maybe you could plant them up and give them to a friend, something like that. Everybody loves these, so you might as well share the monster. Okay, and I mentioned to you that we do have multiple of these, all cut from the same big mother plant that was outside. So I'm gonna go ahead and walk you over to the part in our greenhouse where we've got a couple others. You can see how they're doing, and just some examples of if you take care of it right, it will thrive. So over here, got a couple more. These were all just one big vine at one point, growing, overgrowing basically. And we cut these sections off of them. All right, plant heroes, that'll do it for our talk today on Monstera Deliciosas. Hopefully these tips helped you get the confidence to care for one for yourself. anything in here helped you, drop some fertilizer on that like button. If you enjoy this content, hit the subscribe button for more, and be sure to click the bell to be notified of future plant fun. But forgive my awesome drawing here in the back, and let me know in the comments if you want any specific tips on any aspects of this plant or any videos made on any other types of plants in general, because I love doing these for you and they help me research best care practices to make sure that I have my exact information correct, make sure I can give them the care they need to thrive. So thanks for gathering here today. Hope you grow, and I'll see you next time.